if you're an everyday person, you're not in any political position or a power position to really do anything about it or get the attention you need. So that's why I decided, need some exposure. There's plenty of people blogging about it on the computer, on the internet, but nobody had really put anything out where a non-targeted person or a person who's never heard about this can pick it up off the shelf at a Barnes & Nobles or Amazon and learn about it. Because knowledge is power, and if you know about it, you know its capability. When you first start being affected by it, you're not going to go run to somebody and say, oh, my God, I'm hearing voices, and end up with a diagnosis that's going to discredit you for the rest of your life.
So, okay, because this is very tantalizing that you actually were involved in something, doing something for the government where you came across a certain type of surveillance that wasn't exactly satellite-based, as you said, but that it was related in some form or fashion to what you came across later. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it was used for communication at that time, radio-free communication. So when people went out into the field, they could be given directions. To my knowledge or to my memory, it wasn't two-way at that time. It was one-way communication to give you directions in a field setting without a radio. You heard it in your head. So it's been worked on for quite some time. In 1996, through Freedom of Information, there's a 1996 article from the Army called the Addendum to the Bioeffects of Non-Lethal Weapons, where they bring it up pretty succinctly as microwave hearing. And in that research study, they even say that imagine the incapacitating results when an enemy combatant begins to hear voices in their head that aren't their own. And they go on to mention the value of this technology in a hostage crisis, where the hostages can be communicated with without the hostage hearing, or the hostage taker being communicated with without the hostages hearing. As a matter of fact, I remember here in Texas several years back, we had the Waco, the Branch Davidian thing.
Right.
In Newsweek, they had ran an article where the FBI had contracted the work of Igor Smirnov from Russia, who worked in this technology, and were actually going to try using the voice of God in David Koresh's head to try to make him give up. I don't know if they ever actually did it. From the Newsweek article, they said that they humored the idea. They brought him over. They thought about doing it and decided not to for some reason, or decided not to tell us they did. Anyway,
right, which is much more likely.
Yeah, which is more the case.
Okay, well, this is actually, amazingly interesting. I have to say that we're also talking about, literally, you're talking about using voice technology that goes directly to the mind of the person, right?
Yeah, it's called microwave hearing. It was based on the early studies by Dr. Alan Frey. They called it the Frey effect, F-R-E-Y, or Fry, depending on what part of the country you're from. He noticed that certain individuals around radar installations could tell when the radar came off and on. They would hear it in their head, a popping and crackling kind of sound. So he started doing research on that and found out that it's radio frequency in the microwave bandwidth that can actually heat up the thermoelastic tissue in the middle ear and cause a sound wave that propagates, and eventually you start hearing the sound. And what the Army and what all the intelligence communities have done is capitalize on that to be able to carry spoken word and communications on that same microwave carrier wave.
Okay, and what year was that, to your knowledge?
They started, they already had it pretty well perfected in 96 when they wrote the report. So it would have been probably 85, 86, 87, about those years.
Incredible. And I also heard rumors that that's exactly the technology they used to get Saddam Hussein's armies to surrender.
Very similar technology. That was called silent sound spectrum or silent spread sound spectrum. And you're right. I mean, those men took apart their weapons and surrendered with their weapons taken apart.
Because that would basically, to be point blank, scare the shit out of someone, who's on a battlefield and starts hearing voices, especially if those voices are sort of sounding like they're, the word of God or any other kind of quasi-religious type of thing. This also lends itself to another sort of side of things, at least from my point of view, which is channeling. And this is where the government could easily be influencing certain people out in the field who think they're channeling one group of entities and may indeed end up basically channeling messages from the government when all's said and done. They could even start out legitimate and then get taken over on a certain level. Wouldn't that be possible?
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I got off the phone just an hour ago with a woman in Connecticut who heard me on another radio show and has had some weird things going on in her home, and she wanted to talk to me to see if possibly she was being affected by this technology. Very spiritual woman. Thought that possibly she had been contacted by entities. Her cats were being attacked, were wincing in pain like they were being attacked by something. She was having burning spots on her legs and on her arms, and was hearing voices, but not to a large extent, and was afraid that she possibly had a demonic entity in her home. And after talking to her a little further, she had break-ins. Things messed with in her house, but nothing stolen, and she had people following her around as well, stalking her. And I said, you know what, I'm a spiritual person too, but when I've got away, is this an entity or is this someone harassing you? The better bet is on the harassment. So
very interesting. And I have to say, to get back to your specific story with this woman that you were engaged to, why do you think they targeted her in particular? Any idea?
It was strictly sexual assault based. She was a mortgage broker. She happened to work in an office for Wells Fargo doing tele mortgaging, and one of the PIs actually worked there as well. And one of the PIs and another physician in San Antonio had become attracted to her. And what better way to sexually assault someone than basically control them into drinking or eating wherever you put the Rohypnol? Because that's the other scary thing with this technology. If you're bombarded with it and they're using a voice other than your own, and they're putting voices in your head, well, that's audible harassment. What you're hearing. If they put it in your mind in your tone of voice, like the little voice you hear in your head as you read, then a lot of people, a great subset of people, will respond to that as their own thought. Well, then that becomes mind control. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these victims, my ex-fiancée included, is that you can be controlled. Your behavior can be controlled. You can be brought to rage, brought to sadness, made to think you're thirsty, made to think you're hungry, made to drink alcohol when ordinarily you don't drink, all based on basic controlling your thoughts. I hesitate to call it subliminal messaging because it's really more of an alteration of EEG than you acting on a suggestion. It's actually placing a thought in your head.
And this is where we get into, I guess, Manchurian candidate type people who are going out and murdering people, even the schoolyard slangs. Obviously I think there is some antidepressants or whatever type of drugs that are also influencing those individuals apparently, but this side of it, if you couple that with an antidepressant or getting off an antidepressant, then you've really got a state of affairs where you can really manipulate the person.
And you've hit the nail on the head with the Manchurian Candidate. That's really where all the studies began, with MKUltra creating Manchurian candidates. Well, at that time, what actually wound up getting the CIA kind of busted, I guess, and forced into a congressional hearing, was at that time they were using drugs, electroshock therapy, LSD, and deprivation to do this. So they had to round people up into a hospital setting to do these things to them. And they got away with it for a long time until people finally, there were enough numbers and enough people voicing the complaints that they had a congressional hearing. Well, now they're doing it with directed energy, various